The night sky was split by sheets of rain, each drop pelting the windshield like tiny stones as Daniel Brooks squinted through the blur, his tired hands gripping the steering wheel of his old pickup. He had just finished a double shift at the diner, his back aching and eyes heavy, but the thought of getting home to tuck in his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, kept him alert. The road was nearly empty, just a ribbon of glistening asphalt reflecting streaks of headlights. Then, suddenly, up ahead, a car swerved violently, its tires screeching against the wet pavement before it spun out of control. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as he watched the sleek black vehicle slam hard into the guardrail, metal crumpling like paper on impact. Without hesitation, instinct drowning out exhaustion, Daniel pulled his truck to the shoulder and bolted into the storm. Rain soaked his jacket in seconds, but he pushed forward, yanking at the crushed door of the wrecked car. Inside, through the shattered glass and twisted frame, he saw a woman, her head slumped against the steering wheel, a gash bleeding at her temple, her breath shallow. "Stay with me," Daniel muttered, bracing his shoulder and pulling with all his strength until the mangled door gave way with a screech. The acrid smell of smoke filled the air, and panic clawed at his chest, every second mattered. Gently, he slid his arms around her, lifting her out of the wreckage just as sparks hissed from the hood. Laying her on the slick asphalt, he checked for a pulse, relief washing over him when he felt the faint beat beneath his fingertips. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed and clouded with pain, and her lips parted as she whispered hoarsely, why did you help me?" Daniel, shivering in the rain, met her gaze and answered simply, "Because you needed me." He stayed by her side until the wail of sirens broke through the storm, paramedics rushing in to take over. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, Daniel stepped back quietly, unnoticed, his heart still pounding. He had no idea who she was, no clue that the woman he had just pulled from the wreckage wasn't just a stranger on a dark road, but someone whose world was a universe away from his own. At the hospital, Daniel lingered just long enough to make sure the woman he had pulled from the wreck was breathing steadily under the doctor's care before slipping out unnoticed, his shoes squeaking against the sterile tiles as he hurried back into the rain-soaked night. He couldn't afford to stay, Emma would wake soon, and he needed to be there, her only parent left since his wife had passed away years earlier. By dawn, he was home in their tiny apartment, flipping pancakes while Emma sat at the table, swinging her legs and chattering about school. He listened, smiling faintly, though his mind kept drifting back to the crash and the woman's fragile voice asking why he helped her. Across town, in a private hospital suite, Alexandra Reid stirred awake, her forehead bandaged, her body sore from the accident. The CEO of Reid Enterprises, one of the most powerful conglomerates in the country, she was a woman who commanded boardrooms with icy precision, yet now she felt strangely vulnerable. Her assistant, frantic with worry, briefed her on what had happened, but when Alexandra asked about the man who had rescued her, no one had any answers. He hadn't left his name, hadn't asked for recognition, he had simply vanished into the night. That unsettled her more than the crash itself. People always wanted something from her, money, influence, a favor. But this man? He had risked his life for her and walked away without a trace. For the rest of the day, Alexandra couldn't stop thinking about him. Meanwhile, Daniel tried to push the memory aside, burying himself in work at the diner, his uniform still smelling faintly of grease and coffee as he carried plates to regulars who barely looked up. He had no idea his life had brushed against someone else's in a way that would ripple far beyond that rainy night. That evening, as he counted his tips, barely enough to cover rent, Alexandra sat in her hospital bed, scrolling through security reports and police statements, ordering her assistant to find out everything about the mysterious rescuer. Gratitude burned in her chest, but so did something else, a gnawing curiosity. Who was this man who had no reason to care, yet chose to? She made herself a promise, she would not rest until she looked him in the eyes again. The next evening at the small diner on Maple Street, Daniel adjusted his faded apron and wiped down the counter, trying to shake off the fatigue clinging to him after another long day. Business was slow, just a few truckers sipping coffee in silence, until the bell above the door jingled and in walked a woman who instantly silenced the room. She was elegant in a tailored navy coat, her posture straight, her presence commanding, and though a faint scar still traced her temple from the crash, she carried herself with the kind of confidence that drew every eye. Daniel froze, recognizing her face immediately. It was the woman he had pulled from the wreck, alive and whole, standing in his diner. Alexandra Reid approached the counter with a small smile, her voice warm yet steady as she said, "You're the man who saved me." He felt heat rise to his cheeks as he muttered, "Just did what anyone would've." But she shook her head firmly. "No. Most people would have driven past. You didn't." She insisted on buying coffee, and as the minutes passed, conversation flowed between them. Daniel tried to keep things light, speaking about his daughter Emma, whose drawing was taped proudly on the wall behind the counter, and Alexandra listened intently, her sharp businesslike demeanor softening as she asked questions about his life, his struggles, and his dreams. For the first time in years, Daniel found himself opening up, surprised at how easily he could talk to this stranger who lived in a world so different from his own. Around them, the other waitresses whispered, recognizing Alexandra from magazine covers and television interviews. She was the billionaire CEO who had rebuilt entire industries with her vision, yet here she was, sipping diner coffee as if it were the finest drink in the world. Before she left, she looked at him with quiet intensity. "Daniel, I owe you more than I can ever repay," she said, pulling a sleek card from her purse and sliding it across the counter. He hesitated, reluctant to accept anything, but she added softly, "I don't forget the people who save me." With that, she walked out into the night, leaving Daniel staring at the card in his hand, his heart pounding as he wondered what kind of storm he had just stepped into. A week later, as Daniel and Emma were finishing a simple dinner of pasta in their modest apartment, the rumble of a sleek black car pulling up outside made him glance out the window in confusion. Moments later, a knock echoed at the door, and when he opened it, there stood Alexandra Reid, dressed in her signature elegance but smiling warmly, the harshness of her public image replaced by something gentler. Emma peeked out from behind her father, wide-eyed, whispering, "Daddy, she looks like a princess," which drew a soft laugh from Alexandra as she knelt to meet the little girl's gaze. "Your daddy is a hero," she said, and Emma beamed proudly. Turning back to Daniel, Alexandra's expression grew more serious. "I didn't come here to say thank you again, I came with an offer." She stepped inside at his hesitant nod, looking around the small apartment, the second-hand furniture, the bills stacked neatly on the table. "You don't want charity, I can see that," she continued. "But I need people I can trust, Daniel, and I trust you. I want you to work for me, not because I owe you, but because people like you are rare." Daniel blinked in disbelief, his instinct telling him he didn't belong in her world of wealth, suits, and power, but Emma's curious eyes studied him, silently urging him to listen. Alexandra explained she wanted someone grounded, someone who would be honest with her, someone who understood loyalty and sacrifice, not just another polished executive. "You risked your life for a stranger," she said softly. "That tells me everything I need to know about your character." Silence stretched as Daniel considered her words, his heart torn between fear of stepping into the unknown and the chance at a better life for his daughter. Finally, he nodded slowly, his voice steady but quiet. "If this is real, if you mean it, then yes, I'll do it." Alexandra's smile widened, relief flashing in her eyes as she extended her hand, sealing a pact neither of them could fully understand yet. That night, as the black car pulled away, Emma clutched her father's arm and whispered, "Daddy, I think everything's going to change now." Daniel looked down at her, a mix of hope and nerves in his chest, and though he didn't know what lay ahead, he sensed that fate had rewritten their lives the moment he had stopped his truck in the rain.